Welcome back to the Human Narrative Podcast, my friends. I am your host, Clark, aka the Sober Webb, for those listening in from the TSW community on YouTube. And we're going to jump right into today's episode because I have an amazing conversation with my friend, DePietro, and I am honored and excited to share it with you. And I'll let his words and stories speak for themselves, but he gets really vulnerable about his journey with PTSD and how his healing journey has now led him to become a coach who works with others to heal their PTSD, utilizing tools like somatic EMDR, amongst other things. If you want some context about his story prior to listening to this episode, you can check out his story on www.unbreakablecoach.com. I've put a link to his website in the episode notes, but no matter what, please listen to this entire episode. Not only do we talk about the narrative around PTSD and healing it, which can apply to everyone. There's so much vulnerability thrown into the mix from both he and I, but we also get into other human narratives like the lack mentality, life as an employee working for the corporate man, asking for what you want in life, and then gene keys, and so much more. So if you're listening to this, you have found this episode for a reason, so sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with DePietro.
Your perspective is one of two things. It's either your power or your prison.
Okay.
But you got to choose. And it's a choice.
All right.
That's a choice.
So say that again. I like that.
Your perspective is your power or it's your prison. You just have to make a choice. And everyone chooses.
So how we view things is pretty much how what it obviously dictates like how we feel about life and everything like that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. That's life.
Yeah.
You know, it's my perspective on my current situation. Right?
Which we were just talking about off camera or off mic.
Right.
Right.
It could be my power or it can be my prison. I'm choosing to make it my power. You know, so I'm working every day at pushing forward with my goals and the things that I want to do, the things that I know that I've been being called to do.
Right.
Right? So that's what I'm doing with it. Whereas literally a week ago, I was constrained by using my effort, my labor, to build somebody else's dream. Right? Mm-hmm. That's the difference, right? Am I going to put my effort into my dream, or am I going to take that effort and expend it on someone else's dream and stay stuck basically in the same spot?
Yeah.
With the wheel spinning, right? For me personally. So.
Well, let's talk about the coaching. So, Jay has unbreakablecoach.com, right? That's
correct.
your website?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm going to plug it because
Thank
it's
you.
important for people to know where they can find you, and we can reiterate that at the end of it. But like, what kind of coaching? What do you want to help people heal from? I mean, I read your story earlier, which it's crazy, and I'm so sorry. Like, I mean, I can't even imagine.
You know what?
I know it's funny just that we say sorry in the face of like grief and stuff.
So many people say that to me. They say sorry, and my canned response in the past was, "Why are you sorry? You didn't do anything."
Yeah.
Right. And I understand, and I get it, and I get the sentiment, and I appreciate that when people say that. You know what I mean? So, and I think that's been a long time coming for me to be able to be in that space where I can just appreciate someone saying that to me. Yeah, it's great.
You can kind of like accept it for what it is. Just be like, maybe a moment of compassion. Or
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. I mean, my situation was so. It's literally so unique that I haven't dedicated a lot of time to trying to find anybody else that's had a similar circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
But I've spent a little bit of it, and I've asked around, and I've reached out to, multiple different people, and no one, not a soul. Yeah. It's actually so unique and so bizarre that people look at me and go, "That can't have happened." And I go, okay,
Yeah.
if you say so.
I mean, you don't have
Definitely did.
we don't have to necessarily share this. You can share the story if you want to. We don't have to share
It's
it here.
out there on the internet
I mean,
now,
people
so
can read
yeah.
it if they want to. I mean, I mean, you share whatever you want to share, but
But the way I'm approaching the coaching is that, and it's all relevant, right? It's all related, right? So horrible event, 25 years of like just absolute living hell, and then coming out of that and seeing things from, again, your perspective, right? Seeing things from a whole different perspective. And looking at that and go, you know what? If I can go through all this and I can find my way out of it, right? I'm not saying I didn't have help because I did. I definitely did. And I love those people. But if I can do that, I look back and go, okay, I can see all of it clearly, right? Everything that happened and the patterns and all those things. If I can get through that myself, I can use what I know to help somebody else, regardless of what their situation is. It doesn't have to be some extreme traumatic event.
right.
It can be whatever. I'm having trouble in my life with my girlfriend. My kid is, I don't know how to deal with this situation with my kid or whatever that situation is, right?
Yeah.
You just, because it's the same things that will get you from point A to point B, right? What's that goal? Where's your problem, right? Is it severe? Do you know it's severe? And where do you want to be? So let's get you there.
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
It's really simplified, but it really is simple. You know, it's like that old thing: keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
KISS.
we just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Let's keep it simple.
I mean, I agree because I've been sober almost 7 years. You know, I should before I even get into.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I
You know what I
appreciate
mean?
that.
Congratulations. It's hard work.
Yeah, I mean, it was life changing in so many ways. But you know, I like the word catalyst because you know, like we all have catalysts for change, whether it's good or bad. You know, and like my catalyst when I was 24, that put me into alcoholism to struggle with alcohol for 13 years, and then it took my mom dying 10 years ago when I became a dad, almost the exact same moment. That was my catalyst to change for the better. Yeah. Even though my journey, I had to actually get worse with my drinking until my son was 3 years old. But I believe I kind of agree with you. Like we don't have to have the same experiences to be able to help other people. Like
we don't.
Like what I've learned in sobriety, I think can help people that struggle with fear and anxiety and whatever their addiction is in so many ways. And that's what I hope to do with the kind of program that I'm working on and everything like that.
100%.
But you're doing the exact same thing. Like it doesn't matter if they have the exact same experience. We all kind of, PTSD is PTSD.
You know what? PTSD is PTSD.
That's probably actually not.
And so
it's probably a simplified way of saying it, but
it's a simplified way of saying it. But so I've come to feel like that the D, you need to drop the D off the end of it, right? Because I don't think it's a disorder anymore. I use it, but personally, I'm not sure if it's really a disorder anymore. I think that because I think you can come out of it. I know that there's ways that you can come out of that, right? Because I think if I went today back, so I was diagnosed with PTSD in May of 1998, right? And that was a year after an incident, the incident with my brother. And I bet you if I went back to that same doctor that diagnosed me with that then and had the same conversation, he'd probably say, yeah, you're good. At this point, he would probably say, you're good, right? And so we know that with post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder, and then you can take it one step further, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, right? Which is where I was, CPTSD, right? So it was complex because there was multiple things stacked on top of each other, plus the fact that I spent 20 plus years, untreated, just living with it, right? And God, I mean, I could go down the rabbit hole with that, but you're not necessarily you're not living with it, right?
Yeah.
If you're
It's living.
it's
you're living through it, or it's living with you.
It's driving you, right? So it's driving the bus. You're not driving the bus, right? It's driving the bus. You're just going through these motions in your life. And when I look back now, right? It's all, again, I go back to that perspective. You look back at that perspective, and I go, I can see that, I can see that, I can see that, I can see that, I can see where it did that, I can see where it did this, I can see why all those things happened. And so I like to drop that D off at this point, because it's like, it's not a disorder, it's just a thing.
I agree. I mean,
It's a thing that happens.
I mean, I dropped the D off of alcoholism and addiction in terms of people, and this might not, some people won't agree with me, like it being a disease,
Right.
it's like, maybe it's a disease of the soul or the mind or something like that, but
I think I think that,
I feel like those things like disorder and disease keep people stuck in them, thinking that they're never going to be able to heal.
okay.
And it's
so
like an identity.
So I agree, 100%. 100% I agree with that. Because I think what happens is, as soon as they attach that D, disorder, disease, it says something to you in your mind that this is, because as a society, we've come to recognize those two words as being this lifelong.
It's your
thing.
identity.
Like, you got this for eternity, right? So yeah,
It's like an extra surname almost.
certainly, certainly, and anyone who thinks that they're not carrying that word around in the back of their head as they're going through their daily life, they're mistaken, because it's just weaving its way in and out of everything you do, right? So,
What was the process of how do you heal PTSD? Like, what is with your experience? Like, how do you start healing that?
for me, it's different for a lot of people, right? So every case is very different, right? It's not like, I hate to use this as an analogy, but I'm going to, right? It's not like, okay, you've got leukemia, right? So everybody who's got leukemia has leukemia, right? Not everybody that has post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic stress, disorder, has it the same. It's not the same. Everybody's experience is very different, right?
How they develop the PTSD, you're saying?
And the way that they develop it, and so the symptoms can all be very different as well. So I can't reflect on someone else's. I can reflect on mine. I can say, this is what mine will like. This is what it was like for me. This was my experience. I can't speak to someone else's experience with it. I only know that, yeah, I get it. I freaking totally get it. You know what I mean? I know that you're going to be hypervigilant. I know that you're going to lose sleep. I know that, you're going to have poor social interactions. Your relationships are going to fall apart. I know you're going to have difficulty in your professional life and with work. And I know those things. I know that you're going to have an absolute tendency to self-medicate. And I've been there, and I did that. You know what I mean? I did that, so I know. Fortunately for me, it didn't really develop into a broader problem.
Okay.
Right? So I was able to put the brakes on that. But, truth be told, it was probably about 1.5 years that I friggin' drank every night to go to sleep, because I couldn't sleep.
Sure.
So it wasn't like I got up in the morning and had a drink and then drank all day. I get up in the morning and go through my life normally until it came time to go to bed, and then I'd drink. And it started out, that whole process started out with, I'd have a glass of wine. Okay, it's just enough to take the edge off, go to bed, right? So then the glass of wine went from like the glass of wine to half the bottle to the whole bottle. And then I said, fuck that, to whole bottle. Let's get the vodka.
Yeah.
right? So
Wine
then we
ain't cutting it.
right. So then let's get the vodka. So then we hit the vodka, and then the vodka went from one drink to a friggin' fifth before bed.
Yeah.
Matt, and I don't have to tell you how you feel when you freaking wake up the next day.
Oh, it's terrible.
Right? So, yeah, been there, done that, did that whole trip. So I get how guys tend to self-medicate with that,
Do you think that it's more of, because you just said guys, do you think that
Well,
men?
I mean, I say that as like an umbrella term because there's men and women.
Yeah, no, but I
100%.
think it's interesting that, do you think that it's harder for men to, I mean, I kind of know the answer to this, that it's harder for men to heal like PTSD because of the fact that you have to express yourself and you have to be vulnerable and you have to like maybe open up to someone?
100%. I think that it's more difficult for men because, and I say this, I've said this, it wasn't until recently, so this is recently within the past couple of years for me, right? We're brought up to be, you're the protector, you're the big brother, you're, name it, go down the checklist, right? And that's how we're brought up and we're taught, big boys.
I like it. We're getting into what it means to be a man now.
Big boys don't cry, right? So
yeah.
big boys don't cry. Well, you know what? Yeah, they do. The biggest boys do. 100%. Grown men do. Absolutely. But you get that instilled in you from a young age, and then you carry that with you probably for the rest of your life in most cases, right? Hopefully not. Hopefully you learn that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show your emotions. It's okay to be compassionate and caring and all those things.
It's okay not to be okay.
And it's totally okay to not be okay. And it's okay to ask for help if you know you're not okay. It's absolutely okay. In fact, I encourage it.
Right.
Because the alternative to that is, oftentimes this permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Right.
So that's where we are.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
There's so much that we could just like dive into.
I mean,
now.
there's a whole lot here. I mean, there's a ton here. We could talk about anything.
I mean, by the time that this episode comes out, I'll have already released a soliloquy episode that I did on what it means to be a man. And
no kidding.
I talk about that. And actually, you and I were chatting about the ego at our last little get together. So I started for those that are listening that have no idea really ultimately who we are, unless you know us. I started a content creation club. God, it sounds cheesy when I say it out loud. A few months back because I needed a community around people that are making content, and it brought me Jay and a friend named Caroline and Heidi, and it's turning out to be this like kind of little spiritual manifestation group. I mean, we talk about content, but we kind of talk about this stuff more than anything.
Yeah, we do. We talk about this sort of stuff more than anything, which is evidence to me that there's so many people out there that just need that.
Yeah.
Right? They need that. What's the word I'm
community?
searching for? They need that community.
Yeah.
They need to be together with other people.
Which is why I started it.
Where you can be open and vulnerable and talk about all this stuff, and not feel like, geez, if I say this, I'm going to look like an idiot. Or if I say this, they're going to think this about me. Just, being honest and telling the truth is like probably what got me why I lost my job. But
well, you're kind of doing. I remember, like at the last get together, you were talking about how you were kind of coaching a younger guy to kind of ask for what he wanted. I think it was,
and he got it.
See,
boom.
Yeah.
He went in and he did what I said, and he got it.
Yeah.
How's that?
So the person in charge realized that you're going to be coaching everyone to
say,
hey,
something?
I deserve more money.
It was right around that time that I called him out on his ego.
Oh.
Right? But he was all right, but there was one more above him. Like, it was the guy that's above him that got me. Because I don't think that guy wanted to. I don't think he necessarily wanted to let me go. I think this other guy wanted to let me go. And the other guy was this new guy that came in with him that I completely misread. right? So he came in, and I had been so used to, so we had these monthly meetings, right? First Saturday of the month, morning meeting. It was great. They would cater it with some food, and you'd get breakfast, right? But you'd listen to the same routine every time. And it was like, okay, this is old. Everybody knows this shit. Why are we listening to this again? But when he came in, and they did their first one. And he had a good talk, and it was motivational, and you could tell that he probably had been doing a little bit of his Tony Robbins, right? And he was pumping that all the right keywords out there, right? Putting it right. His word tracks were right on the mark. And it was such a change from what we had that I shook his hand, and I said, you know what? Thanks for that. I said, that was great. And I misread this guy entirely.
This is the guy that ultimately you feel like you got let go.
This is ultimately the guy who looked at me and said, you know, these conversations are never good to have. And I looked at him and said, yeah, so you're letting me go? He's like, yeah. And he handed me the paperwork. We didn't even really have a conversation.
No, like explanation or justification or anything like that?
I won't get it. So
you also don't have to get into it.
I'll definitely get into it. So he got into this explanation of, you know, you can't work on Friday afternoons and blah, blah. And I said, excuse me? So, well, you know, Friday afternoons, you know, you leave early on Friday. I said, yeah, I go to therapy every Friday. And that's a reasonable accommodation. He goes, yeah, well, you know what? Yeah, well, it's performance, and we're restructuring the company. We're eliminating that position. Yeah, so it was like, here's my explanation to you. Here's the real reason why you made this list. But because, maybe I shouldn't have said that, right? Because we could get into all the legal ramifications of that.
Right.
And I'm not a particularly litigious person, so I don't care to pursue any of that shit. And I probably could if I wanted to, but it's not on my agenda. I'm going to feed you all this other shit. Okay, well, it's definitely not my job performance because I show up every day. I'm there early before everyone else. I set things up for the guys that work under me. I make sure that everything's set to go. I try to meet all these outrageous promises that are being made somewhere else, not by me. You know what I mean? So I've got to try to meet these customer expectations that have been set by guys that aren't really in tune with what's going on. And I'm doing it with a quarter of the staff that I had a year ago.
Yeah, it's the curse of the corporate.
It really is.
Corporate monster.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, I'm stuck working for a corporate company again myself after getting laid off during COVID. And I swore when I got laid off after COVID, I would never go back to a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
But yet, you know, life goes the way life goes, and you're forced to go back to a 9 to 5.
It does, right?
Or more like a 7:30 to 4. And it's fine. But it definitely reminds me of like what I don't want to do with my life, which is why, you know, I'm trying to, I don't know, build something on the outside of it, right?
You know what? You never know. You don't know how it works out. Is that your dream? Is that your vision?
Yeah.
Are you pursuing it?
The perspective.
Like, it's your perspective,
Yeah.
right? Your perspective, your power, right? So take that perspective and keep moving forward.
You know what's interesting about the whole perspective, because you said perspective is either your power or your prison. That's how you said it, right?
That's why I said it, and I stole that.
Oh, it's okay.
Who did I get that from? Oh, God. Somebody else said that.
Well,
and it stuck with me.
Well,
it absolutely stuck with me because it made so much sense that it just hit home that I just keep using it.
Yeah, a friend recently introduced me to the gene keys.
Was that Carolyn?
No, it's Carolyn.
Because she introduced me to it.
Oh my God, no! I was picking up my son. I was picking up my son from a sleepover birthday party, and the mom and I sat there for an hour and started talking. And we honestly had a podcast that I wish I would have recorded because it was just kind of like this, you know, spiritual stuff. And she was talking about gene keys, and I said, "Oh, it's gene keys." So she introduced to me, and now I'm studying it. And I think my gene key is number 26 is my primary one, which has to do with being stuck in this mentality of lack. But it was interesting because recently I've been stuck in this perspective of like, I'm stuck. Like, I don't know how to financially get where I need to go or how to financially be free of like this debt of the past. And I'm stuck. And I realized, I was like, oh crap, my gene key I'm stuck in my shadow right now.
So you're talking about money, right? So
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah.
now you're talking about finances and money, right? So take this for what it's worth, right? So I have since I started in March, and I did 90 days working with a coach, right? So I'm the client, and I'm working with a coach, and she says all the time, $1 is no different than $1 million. It's no different. It's just paper. Okay? Don't let yourself be constrained by that. All right? Change your mindset, you change your life. So if you can visualize in your mind and in your body and feel like that, get that feeling of being where you already want to be. Where's that end result, right? I'm going to use that. I'll say that now. Like, what's your end result? What's your goal, right?
Okay.
Because we don't like to. Another thing I learned is we don't like to use the word goal. Unfortunately, you kind of have to, right?
Because what? Because a goal
because
is
once
so final feeling.
It is
like, oh,
final.
I reached the goal. What's
I reached
next?
the goal. That's the end, right?
Yeah,
the
yeah.
goal is you relate that goal as being the end, right? But it's not the end. Like, so what happens when you get there?
You find the next goal line.
You move forward again, or you move up, constantly up, right? So we go up to that level, and then we go up to the next level, and then we go up from there.
Well, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. There's sorry to interrupt you, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a series on Netflix says that whenever he reaches the top of one mountain, he just finds the next mountain that he's got to climb.
Exactly.
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's also a great visual analogy of like what we're talking about.
That's a great example. That's a good person to use as an example because look where he came from. Look what he achieved. Started with like nothing, right? Literally, came here. What did he achieve?
Still doing it.
He's still doing it, right? He's still doing it.
Yeah.
Like, so whatever that is that drives him, continues to drive him. And it's been successful for him, clearly.
Yeah.
I don't know about his personal life, but his professional life certainly looks like he's done well.
He's pulled a few things off.
Yeah,
So all right, so back to your back to what you were talking about though, because we're talking about envisioning where we want to be, the goal, but it's not the goal.
So if you can put yourself in that mindset that I'm already there, and if you can hold that, right? Imagine what it would feel like to you to have reached your goal. If you can imagine that, right?
Right.
And picture that. Now hold that. Hold that feeling. And practice holding that feeling. And proceed like that every day. Like you're that person, right? So it's a shift in your identity. Right? So you change. We don't have to be this identity that we have right now. We don't have to keep this identity. We can change it, right?
Yeah,
and this
exactly.
is my coach. This is my coach who's teaching me this, right? And she's pretty successful.
Yeah.
Pretty damn successful. So if you put yourself in that mindset and you keep that mindset and you hold that, eventually that does become your identity. And so with that, all the things that would be magnetically attracted to that are going to be drawn to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it reflects your statement of the perspective is your power, your prison, because if we have a perspective that, oh, I'm never going to get out of this financial debt or I'm never going to make more money, that's the prison.
That is the prison.
We're like, we become a negative magnet.
You do become a negative magnet. And when you speak the words out there, when you're thinking that and then you speak those words, you make that, you hear those words, right? And so we retain those things that we hear, and they continue to resonate with us. change the narrative, change the way you think.
It's interesting.
Change your life.
Have you ever read, we say that one more time. Because the podcast is called The Human Narrative, so just
it is, right?
Say that again.
So
that was perfect. We didn't plan this.
Change the narrative. Oh, man. I'm going to have to...
Change your narrative.
Change your narrative. Change the narrative. Change your mind. Change the mind, your mindset.
Yeah.
And you'll change the way you live.
You know, have you read the book The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel
100%.
Ruiz? Yeah. And I mean,
I've read the book The 5 Agreements as well.
That's
You
true.
know what I mean? I can say he's got like 5 of them.
Yeah.
It's not he's got more than that, but I've read like 4 of his books.
But that's very similar to like the idea of the agreements being made for us, especially like as kids or maybe before we're even born, that someone makes an agreement that we believe that then becomes part of our identity.
It does.
And it's just the same concept in a different word.
It is.
You know?
It's exactly the same concept.
So if we break that agreement and say, you know, and I'm not a broke dad. I'm a successful rich dad. You know? Just working my way towards that goal.
Look at, you know, like everybody looks for wealth, right? And everybody takes that word and they misinterpret the word wealth. What does wealth mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone interprets it as being, you know, Elon Musk, right? Although that's a whole nother thing in itself, right? Like that we could go down that rabbit hole for God knows how long. But he's obviously wealthy, right? He's got a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
But everyone associates that word wealth with money. They attach it to this financial status. That's not it at all, man. You woke up today, your feet hit the ground, right? You got dressed, you can see, you can hear, you can walk around, you can do the things that you want to do. You have all these opportunities ahead of you. You have a family that loves you. You have a few good friends. You have a roof over your head, right? You're already better than 99% of the people in the rest of the world. You're already wealthier than those people, right? Imagine right now there's some little kid in the Saharan desert or whatever it is in Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's standing in line half a day to get a cup of water, right? And doesn't have a roof over his head. And can't go down the street to McDonald's. Not that I'm advocating McDonald's. I don't. Don't eat McDonald's. It's bad for you. It's not real food. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So you're absolutely 100%. And our problem is our perspective. Again, everything. Perspective is everything, right? So you to have this perspective and your perspective shifts and you look at my life and you look at the things and you're coming from a place of lack, right? Which is exactly what that is. I'm a human being. I do it too. Did it for a long time. This is only like new to me not to be doing that. But I'll tell you what, it feels really good not to do that. But we tend to focus on the things that we don't have instead of the things that we do have. And so for me, it's like start focusing on it. And this is what I would teach people too, right? 100%. What do you have? You know?
Well, it's gratitude practice.
Make a list. It is,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like 12-step stuff.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Like make a list of all the things that you have that you appreciate, that you're thankful and grateful for. And focus on that. Focus on that list. Don't worry about the list of the things you don't have. Because when we start looking at the list of the things that we don't have, we look at that, look at the first thing. Like, so we wrote that down, right? What are the things I don't have, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's not get, you don't have to get crazy. Like, I don't have a Lamborghini. I don't have,
Who wants a
a
Lamborghini?
yacht with a helicopter pad on it. Like, you know what I mean? What am I going to do with that, right?
But things like, I don't have a savings, or
Right, I don't have a savings.
I don't have a brand new car.
I don't have a retirement. I don't have a 401k. I don't, you know what I mean?
I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have a
my cousin-
boyfriend.
Exactly.
I don't have a kid.
So we have this. Well, I don't know. Some people will be grateful for that. I don't have any kids.
No, I
Which
mean-
I'm bummed out about that.
But there are people that are like, they
Right.
struggle to have children, and like it's a real
It's a real issue. I know.
point of grief in their life.
It
you
is,
know?
which is too bad.
Yeah.
It's a blessing. But when we focus on that list, we focus that whole list, right? And that whole list becomes this mammoth that you focus on, right?
A mammoth of lack.
Right.
Oh, that
So-
sounds good. That's like a
so
title
listen,
right there.
It's good to a mammoth of black.
A
You
mammoth
like
of
that?
black.
Right?
That's coin. No one can take it. It's
There you
ours
go.
somehow, Jay.
It's yours.
No, it's
It's
ours.
yours. It's all yours. If you look at, if you focus on shit, you're gonna get shit,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
right?
If you're a shit magnet, you're going to attract shit.
If you focus on shit, you get shit. If you focus on gold, you're gonna get gold, or diamonds, or whatever it is. It's the way life works. It's it's mindset. It's mindset.
It really is. But that gratitude practice is really, really important. And it's like, I know all these things and I forget them sometimes.
I know them too,
But
and
we're
I
also,
and
but we're
I
also
forget
human,
them.
right? But
Right.
I like Phil Stutz a lot. I reference him like all the time. It's ridiculous. But in the book that he wrote called The Tools, do you know it?
I don't.
Oh, it's so good. First, I was literally just writing about him as like an example in another monologue for another episode. But in his book called The Tools, and you can find like on Netflix, you can watch a documentary about him that Jonah Hill made
Okay.
about him called Stutz.
Oh wait,
Brilliant.
I saw this.
Psychotherapist.
I saw this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, I saw it. Jonah Hill and him, we having
yeah.
this big
Oh,
conversation.
well, the book's right there. It's right behind you. It's called The Tools.
Yeah.
He's also just on my favorite podcast with Rich Roll.
Okay.
It's a brilliant hour and a half to listen to. Anyway, but it's called the Grateful Flow. And it's like, when you're feeling down and depressed about where you're at in life or, what you don't have, he's like, you've got to close your eyes and start picturing things that you're grateful for, and you say them out loud. And then you just stop saying them and you just try to stay in that flow of gratefulness to get yourself out of the
Exactly.
funk that you're in.
Okay, so
And it's beautiful when it works.
it's a pretty cool technique. I absolutely believe that works. Absolutely, because I one of the things I learned when I went through the EMDR training, which is somatic EMDR training. It wasn't the standard original type of EMDR where you get this finger waving thing or any of that. But we were taught how to develop a felt sense, right? So that felt sense is taking an internal focus and focusing internally on the body and what you feel, and it keeps maintaining this whatever this thought is in your mind and how you feel at that time in the body, right? And
Whether the thought is positive or negative.
regardless of whether it's positive or negative, right? Typically, the way that's used with somatic EMDR is that.
Yeah, for those, I'm not very familiar with it, but for those that are listening, explain
So,
somatic EMDR.
does everybody know what somatics are?
Explain
It's
that.
it's body. It's the body. It's your nervous system. It's how your nervous system is with your body. It's the physicality, the physical part of it, right?
Okay.
The EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which has only been around since don't quote me, and I should know this, but I think it was 81 or 82. It was developed by a woman named Francine Shapiro, completely by mistake. And she discovered that she was walking and having these eye movements, and she was having some disturbing thoughts, and she realized that while she was having this back and forth type of eye movement, that she was finding relief from these disturbing memories and thoughts.
Would she be focusing on certain things as her eyes move?
Yeah, she'd focus back and forth on different things, and then she expanded it. She realized it, and so she started intentionally trying to do that, and realized that there was some relief with that, and then it was developed into this whole 8-phase process. But with somatic EMDR, there's so EMDR uses bilateral stimulation, right? So the bilateral stimulation with the eye movement back and forth, right? So a lot of times they'd be waving their fingers back and forth, and you focus on it. You can do it at different speeds, right? And you'd have the client hang on to this, try to recall this bad memory that you have, or this memory of this traumatic event in your life, and how did that make you feel, and then focus on this. And as this was happening, that would start to alleviate the way that made them feel, right? So, and I can say this from a place of experience because I went through it as a client. And it was one of the only things, if not the only thing, that got me over the hump
Interesting.
and basically out of the woods, right? So, which is why I became interested in it.
How many sessions and stuff of how much time and work did it take for it to start helping with like your situation?
I think I did 8 or 9, and it was probably by the 6th that I was feeling like, fuck, I'm out of the woods.
So it
Excuse
does
my
obviously doesn't
language.
take away the traumatic event. It helps you alleviates
So what it does,
feelings
what
associated with
what
that.
it does is, we could get into this whole thing, which I'm probably wholly unqualified to talk about, but so when you have a traumatic event, whether it's, I don't know, but we'll go to extremes, right? We'll use extreme events. So most people, when you say PTSD, they think immediately military, soldiers, war, right? This is what they think. The largest percentage of people diagnosed with PTSD, the greatest percentage, is in EMS, police, fire, hospital, ambulance,
Yeah.
right? That's the largest percentage.
I know it's bad for nurses and stuff right now, especially.
It's
because of
horrible.
COVID.
It's horrible for them regardless of COVID.
Yeah.
Because of everything that they're exposed to daily, right?
And you were in the ER yourself.
I worked in an emergency room in a trauma center, right? I worked at a level 1 trauma center in the emergency room for a long time.
I mean, I could imagine. I mean, I
And
can't imagine, but I can see why that would be.
I can tell you and I've thought about this a lot, clearly, right? Because I've had a long time to reflect on all of this, is that when you first start and you go to that first major traumatic event, and you have that first traumatic event, it's disturbing. It's disturbing. It's upsetting to you. You some people get sick, throw up, right? Okay, so now what happens after that? The next one happens, and maybe you don't feel quite that way anymore. And then the next one happens, and you feel a little less of that. And then by the time you get to the 4th, 5th, 6th one down the line.
The sessions of EMDR you're talking about.
No. I'm talking about working in the emergency room and seeing trauma.
Oh, I see. I understand.
Right?
Okay, you're becoming desensitized.
So you're becoming completely desensitized to the point where you could have someone there who's lost a leg or lost an arm or something, and you could literally stand there and eat a sandwich.
Wow.
Right? You wouldn't do that, but you could, because you've already conditioned yourself to that. That's not normal. So your brain and your mind is still processing that information, that traumatic stuff, right? It's still triggering. Your amygdala is like the smoke alarm, right? So it's the smoke detector in the house. And so when there's a traumatic event, it's going off. It starts going off. What starts happening then is it starts dumping norepinephrine and cortisol into the system, right? Because that's fight, flight, freeze. That's where it comes from. What happens with a lot of PTSD is that's energy, right? So that's it. You make the lights up. That lights up, sends out these chemicals from the brain to the rest of the body, your nervous system, right? So if you were to look at your nervous system, you have your brain, and then you have all these nerve bundles, and they come down. It looks like a tree, right? So you got the top of the tree, brain, and then you have this whole series of nerves, and it's your nervous system. Where does all that energy go? Where do all those chemicals go? Through your nervous system into your body, right? Where if it doesn't get properly processed, it gets stored, and it stays with you. It stays there. It can stay there for years. I promise you. It can stay there for 2.5 decades that I know of.
Yeah.
right, that I'm personally aware of.
Yeah.
So with EMDR, what's happening with bilateral stimulation and working within what they call, it's the window of tolerance, right? so you have the state of hypo, right? And the hyper,
Okay.
right? So you're activated here, and then you're kind of in this fawning or frozen space below it. And you work in that window of tolerance where you can hold on to that feeling, you can hold on to that memory, and not be totally activated by it or totally running from it or hiding from it, which you know what I mean? It's the basal dorsal, the dorsal vagal, whatever it is.
I don't
right?
know. I trust you on that.
You're working in your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, right? So if you're working in that window, you can process that information, right? You can process those memories. You can process those feelings, right? Because those memories they're not just memories, they come with feelings, right? Because when you have that memory, it makes you feel a certain way.
Right.
And you can process that. And what we know about trauma is that it demands to be acknowledged and it demands to be processed. And if you don't do either one of those things, you're just putting it off to another day.
It's just stuck in the body.
You're kicking
forever.
the can. You kick the can down the road, and it's stuck in the body. It is stuck in the body forever,
Yeah.
and it will reemerge, and it will probably reemerge, in a very untimely manner, in ways that you're not going to expect. So,
Do you think EMDR is effective for anyone and everyone for their PTSD? I want to say PTS.
I want to say yes, but I know that the truth is that it does not work with everyone, right? And so it has just as much to do with the process as it does with the person receiving it, right?
Right.
Like you've got to be open to that, right? So the trouble, and I'll tell like talk therapy, right? So when I was first diagnosed, I went and tried talk therapy, right? So here's an interesting little story that I kind of leave out of things, right? The first therapist I went to was a young woman, right? Really nice lady. She asked me about, they ask you all these things in the lead up, right? Till they get to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once we got to the thing, and I told her the story, she had tears in her eyes. And I never saw her again after that. They wanted to move me. There was a group, right? There was a group over in Salem. And they moved me to somebody else. And then when I went to somebody else, it was like, let's start this all over again.
Oh, God.
And I was like, yeah, I'm freaking all set with this. Like,
Yeah.
if this is what we're going to do, let's start from square one.
You're like, I don't want to start over and over.
Let's start with
and
all
over.
these intake questions and all this stuff again, right? I already did that. And part of the truth there is I was super angry, right? So we could talk about anger, and I could go into a whole thing about that. Like, I know people that get angry, and then I know people that have been angry. I've been like beyond that point.
Like rage almost.
Almost, but not expressive that way, right? Like internalized to the point where it's guiding you through everything you do.
Okay.
So
yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, that was really, that's kind of where I was from me, and so I walked away from that. And then I had gone back again a little later on. I had gone back, and then I ended up going to see this. So I saw this therapist, and then she was nice. She was okay. She referred me to see this psychiatrist or whatever he was. And I wasn't even in his office for, I want to say it was under 4 minutes. And he already had the script out. And he was writing the script, right? So, okay, I'll give it a try. right? So I forget what they put me on. I think it was clonazepam or some stupid shit, right? So immediately I didn't like the way I felt with that. So I stopped taking it. I continued to have the prescriptions filled, but I stopped taking it. And I had this freaking stockpile of pills that ultimately I had put in my basement. My basement flooded, and they got
Oh my God.
and they all dissolved, which was fine, right?
That's awesome.
Right. So I'm like, okay, thank God, because now I don't have to figure out.
There's a sign I'm not supposed to be taking them.
Right. So what, and I must have, I don't know how many I had, hundreds. But after that, I stopped. I stopped going to see anyone. I walked away from that, like so many guys do, guys and girls. You know what I mean? I know women that walk away too. It's like, and then you spend the next 2 decades, and then you top that off. You want me to say it? I'll say it. I'll put it right out there.
We go for it.
I mean, you top that off, and you find yourself sitting on the side of a riverbed in New Hampshire in this freaking remote area with a pistol in your hand, wrote all the letters. And the strangest part about that is I felt absolutely at peace with that decision.
Wow.
Absolutely at peace. And that was, I talked to Carolyn about this, and she said, because I was in an area in Evans Notch. I don't know if you know where that is.
It sounds familiar.
It's the freaking middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Right? Literally, it's the middle of nowhere. And there's no cell service. None. My phone said no service on it. I was sitting there taking a look around. It was a beautiful day, and I was doing it. I was resigned to it. Like, okay. Because this freight train thing that was going on inside my head, I needed to stop.
Right.
I get a text message come through from my friend John that says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And that was typical of him, right? That was a typical message from him.
Yeah. Just a general, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was like, "Hey, what are you doing, man?" And I got that, my freaking phone went off in the middle of nowhere with
When
no
you had
service,
no service.
still no service.
Shut
I
up.
get a text from him that
Holy
says, "Hey, what are you
crap.
doing?" And I look at it and I go, and I know he didn't write it to mean that way, but the way I took it was like, yeah, what the fuck am I doing?
Wow.
And Carolyn
Wow.
looked at me when I told her the story, and she goes, "That's divine intervention, dude."
Yeah.
And I went, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure it probably is." And so from that moment, that was August of 2022. From that moment, everything changed. Absolutely everything changed. Changed the way I thought about everything. And then, of course, you got to go through this whole process of figuring it out, right? So,
Of course.
what am I going to figure out?
There's the rock bottom, and then you figure out how to
I
get
mean, and
back
people
up.
say, well, what drives you to that? And I said, so, and I was in therapy at the time, right? So I was still seeing a therapist.
And you said this was 2022?
August of 2022. That wasn't the first. That wasn't the first time, though. The first time was in December of 2016. That was because so anniversaries are big,
I know.
right?
Yeah.
So anniversaries are a big thing. So but make a long story short, my brother was murdered. I was involved in his resuscitation or attempted resuscitation, and that stuck with me, right? Led me down this road.
Of course. Yes.
So in 2017, in March of 2017, he would have turned 50. He was 30 when he died. He would have turned 50. Shortly after that was the 20-year anniversary of his death. And the odd thing is those anniversaries seem to be triggering for some reason, right? And I'm not sure why, but it drags up this memory, right? And that drove me pretty close to that spot. And then later on, You know, when I first went to this therapist that I've been going to, we talked about a lot of different shit, but we talked about, she said, you know, what's the memory like to you? And I described it to her, and I said, it's this movie, right? So in my head, I have this home movie in my mind's eye running. And it's that event of that day. And she says, how often does that happen? And I went, what do you mean? It doesn't stop. I said, it's been nonstop for fucking 24, at the time, 5 years. And she's looking at me going, you serious? I'm like, I'm completely serious. I said, sometimes it changes up a little bit, right? Like it'll jump from scene to scene. And other times it'll just play like through the whole thing. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's black and white, sometimes it's color. It's this really fucked up like thing going on.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she goes, so you've been in a state of having a flashback continuously for this length of time? I'm like, if that's what it is, you tell me. I don't know what it is. I think it's this memory that I have that doesn't leave me alone. And so that turns out what that was, right? So essentially where I was is living in a state of flashback, living in a state of hypervigilance constantly, right? Constant hypervigilance, and in fight, flight, freeze continuously for that length of time.
God, yeah.
So, you know, and I can look back now and I can say, yeah. So and I never really dug into the post-traumatic stress stuff along that journey, right? Through that 20 years, I never really dug into it. I knew it's a thing. I knew I was diagnosed with it. I knew I got all this shit going on. But I never dug really into it. So I started reading more and looking into it and reading these papers on all this research that's been done. And symptoms and this cause and effect stuff. And one of the things is you tend to move from one thing to another thing, right? So for me, it was my work life, right? So I'd get a new job. It's a new job, right? You get a new task, you get a new environment, you got to figure things out, right? So it gives you this stuff to do that you've got to focus on. But eventually what happens is once you get comfortable and you learn that process, you learn how to do that job, this other shit starts rolling and taking.
Your brain's no longer preoccupied with learning something new.
So now you're stuck back in that. And then what happens? Bad social relationships, bad work life, bad performance, all these things related to this. Out you go, on to the next thing. So you kind of just leapfrog through with all these things. And that's what happens. And so now, fast forward to now, getting laid off from this job now, because I'm here in this spot and I'm freaking great, and that's like, it's not an issue with me. I'm going, what the fuck? Seriously?
Yeah.
What do you want me to be doing?
Right.
Right? So and
what do you want from me, higher power?
so that's
Whoever's
that's
out there, whoever's
it's a big
up there.
thing with Becca, who's my coach, right? So she's got these 4 things, and the first one is you have to love and accept yourself exactly where you are today, right now in this moment, regardless of where it is, rich, poor, whatever, sick, healthy. You've got to love and accept yourself right there, right? Oh, God, the second one eludes me. The second one is, you can have, be, and do anything you want in this life, literally. The third one is, what is that thing that you desire? What is that thing that you want, right? So you can have whatever you want, you can be whoever you want, but what is that thing? And the fourth one is universe, God, higher power, insert your belief system. what do you want me to know, and what do you want me to do, right? So it's what do you want me to do? And it's funny because she's not the first one that had said that I've heard say that. And the first one that said I heard it from was, I don't know if you're familiar with Sean Ryan, the Sean Ryan Show. It's like the #1 podcast. You should look in. You should listen to him.
I'll check it out.
He's amazing.
Sean Ryan.
Yeah, the Sean Ryan Show. So he said it about himself and about other people. It was like, if you're asking God or your higher power, whatever that higher power is to you, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? You better be ready for the answer. Right? And so when I ask, and I do it a lot, I ask a lot, and I always get the same answer. And it's not like, God's talking to me, like I'm hearing auditory words. And I know it happens with some people, sure, I believe that. But it's always that I'm on the right path, that this is my path, that this is the path where I'm supposed to be.
Just keep going.
Yeah, it's basically keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I
keep
feel
doing
that.
it. And so I'm going to keep doing it. Whatever turns that this path takes, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm taking it. And I said this to somebody the other day. We were talking, and it was, and actually I did a little video about it. So I did one of my little morning live Instagram video things, and it was, everyone. You go, hey, you go to work, and everyone, hey, how you doing? And they go, oh, living the dream,
Oh, God, someone does that at my
and
job
and
all the time.
It's such a negative thing, right? And
living the dream.
So I'm like, okay, so you picture that person as they got a balloon in their hand, right? That they're carrying this balloon, right? So you got the string and you got the balloon. So the balloon's this little black cloud, right? And they're toting this little black cloud on the string around with them. And really, at the end of the day, all they would have to do is just open their hand and let it go.
Yep.
And it would be all set. And so that we were having this conversation about that. And I was like, yeah, that's like, and so for me to be coming up with those things is telling me I'm on the right path. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm making these analogies with these creative type of analogies.
And you're a graphic designer too, so you should turn that into a graphic design.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, right on.
I'm 100% working on it because I said, hey, people. I love people when they say, well, what do you know about it? I said, well, you know what? Somebody was asking me. It was somebody I was working with. Asked me, why do you think you're an expert on this, like EMDR stuff, right? Like, why do you think you're an expert? I said, I'm not an expert on it. But I'll tell you what I am an expert in. I'm an expert on what not to do. I'm an absolute expert on what not to do, how not to proceed with that. All right, because I can tell you, if it wasn't for a high school friend of mine hitting a send button, I wouldn't be here. I would not be here. Literally. That's a fact. So, I can tell you what not to do.
Right.
Because I can tell you where it ends, where you end up. And so when I see all these guys and these statistics about, there's like 22 guys a day, veterans that kill themselves. That's just veterans, right? Where are the other numbers?
I mean, I don't even want to know.
So where are those? It's funny that we're talking about this because this is like Men's Mental Health Month, right? June is Men's Mental Health Month. And so, what are those other numbers? It's crazy. That's crazy, and so that's all. I won't say it's all. I won't say. I can't make that type of blanket statement. But what I can say is that a good percentage of that is probably people with post-traumatic stress that don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Can't address it, haven't addressed it, think they can carry it on their own, right? I know that feeling because I did it. You think you can muscle your way through it. Guess what? You're not muscling your way through that.
Yeah.
You're not.
I feel the exact same way about grief.
Grief is a tough one too, man.
Grief. I mean, I write about this. I'm kind of working on a book, trying to, amongst everything else I'm doing, and I kind of just say everything like just it's pain, just capital P. Like it represents something in everyone's life that they can't muscle their way through, but we try to.
You can't. Well, there's so many things that you can't muscle through. Like it doesn't matter, man, woman, child, whatever, young, old. It doesn't matter. Like you're not going to muscle. There's some things in this life you're not muscling your way through on your own. I don't care who you could be. Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Right. Rocky Balboa. Pick one. Pick one. You're not going to muscle your way through some of these things. You need help.
Yeah.
You need somebody to help you, to guide you, to give you that different perspective. Because a lot of times you get, so down the rabbit hole by yourself that you lose perspective.
Yeah.
And you just need somebody that's standing there going, hey, look over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just look over here for a minute.
And I think that's probably a great way to end the conversation for now.
Yeah.
I mean, but whoever's listening to this, that's still listening to this conversation, it found you for a reason. Listen to Jay's words. It's okay to ask for help. You don't have to muscle through whatever pain, grief, PTSD that you're struggling with. Ask for help, whether it's find Jay, find me, find someone that you can talk to, or EMDR. It's okay to get help. It's okay to ask for help.
Reach out to someone. Doesn't matter. Reach out. There's always someone.
Step one, just admit to someone that you're hurting.
That's it.
Sometimes,
it really is.
Sometimes
it really
just takes
is.
the right,
the first
stranger,
You know what I mean? It's probably the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
Is to admit that, but do it. Just do it, because that it doesn't never get better on its own.
Yeah. It's like first if you can just voice and name the problem out loud, that's when the solutions start finding you. So,
yeah.
cool,
They
man.
do.
They do. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but
It's not easy, but
whoever's listening, you're not alone. So
it's not easy, but if it was easy, it wouldn't be a thing.
yeah, and we'd be living in a world full of healed human beings or
Yeah,
healed souls, which
it would be healed souls. We're all just spiritual beings walking around in a skin and bone bag.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Temporarily until we get the next one.
unfortunately, maybe yeah. So if anyone, where can people find you?
You can find me through you, or you can find me at unbreakablecoach.com.
Okay. On Facebook, do you have a group on Facebook?
I don't have a group on Facebook yet. I haven't really done that.
That's okay.
I just have my personal page on Facebook, but on Instagram, you can get me on @DePietro_art, or it's at unbreakable_mentor on Instagram.
Right on.
So you can get me on either one of those.
So there you have it, my friends. Today's narrative, or should I say narratives, because there was just so much great stuff there. I hope that something in today's episode resonated with you. And just to reiterate the final words of the conversation, you are not alone, and there is no shame in asking for help. No matter what trauma you have suffered or how maybe you currently cope with it, it does not have to define your life, and you don't have to figure it out and heal it on your own. Reach out to Jay or I. If we can't help you, I have no doubt that we can at least point you in the right direction. Much love and life until the next episode. I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you listening to another episode of the Human Narrative Podcast. Talk to you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to another episode from the Human Narrative Podcast. Don't forget to like and share, and we hope you consider subscribing.